Welcome to the last keynote. Thank you for joining me. I know it's the end of a very, very long day. I hope that this will be entertaining and useful. Those would be my two aims. So I want to ask the question today. Whole team quality. Are we all in the same boat? Are we all paddling together? Or are we up the creek? Now, up the creek is an English idiom for those of you that don't know it that basically means we are in very deep trouble. So let's have a look. My agenda. I want to go into a little bit about when we say whole team quality, WTF, like a few of the reactions that I've seen in real life about that idea. I want to talk about evolution, I want to talk about fear, I want to talk about reptiles, and I want to give you some wise words, hopefully, that you will go home with and think, that was very clever what Alex said. That would be really nice. Okay, what we're also going to have, at a couple of instances, I'm going to have dumb question time. I hope that you don't feel in any way insulted if these are questions that you have asked. It's just that I've been doing this for quite a long time now, and there are some questions that when I get asked, I go, So I'm going to try and deal with those as we come across them, and hopefully we will all come out a lot less dumb. Okay, who am I? I started out as a tester. I have been a product owner, a test consultant. I'm now head of our testing department. I've got a team of 9 testers. I'm looking for new testers, if anyone thinks that that would be a good thing to do. And our company is a software development company in Germany. We're based in Braunschweig. We do individual software. The test team is part of the company. We have a nice little community, but we like to be integrated because whole team quality. We love agility, we love testing, we even love UI testing because we do it properly, but that's a whole nother talk. Everyone hates UI testing except me. Yeah, that's about us. So, a few things that I hear when we're talking about whole team quality. Things like, yay, we can get rid of the testers. That's often the developers. So what's the tester doing then? That's often the developers too. So the tester does the whole quality. Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, also no. From customers, excellent. I only have to pay for the magic all-rounder that I have heard about in Agile. Excellent. Not going to happen, never going to work. That comes from kind of all sides. We have a stick that stopped working. Okay. Testing is below my pay grade. We'll get to this later. I don't want to be a tester. I actually had a developer who I taught some exploratory testing, and he was really good at it. And he was like, please don't make me a tester. It's like, okay, you know, fine. And we also get, I'll come back to this later, but we also get a lot of fear, specifically in the relationship between developers and testers. Developers saying, testers can't tell me how to do my code. That's not their thing that they can do. And testers saying, oh God, the developers can't tell me how to test. Basically, apart from the customer who was very excited about paying different rates, everyone is terrified, we're anxious, it's fear, it's anger, it's possibly the dark side. I should have put in a picture of Darth Vader. The thing is, it just makes sense, this whole team quality thing. We are growing in our understanding of how pervasive quality is and quality needs to be at every stage of the whole process, at all levels, quality, all the things, right? We're shifting right, we're shifting left. We haven't shifted up and down yet, but if it gets invented, I invented that phrase right now, okay? We know how important quality is for Agile. And if we look at, okay, buzzword number 1, who's got their bingo? If we look at things like IoT, my test environment for IoT is the world, right? There's some crazy stuff going on. So quality is kind of important, and it makes sense to have that in the whole team. And at times like this, I like to ask myself, WWBD, what would Buffy do? Well, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for those of you who aren't quite as cool as I am, is based on the premise that there is one person whose job it, thanks Baron, whose one job it is to save the world from the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. That one person has the weight of the world on her shoulders. Sound familiar, testers? In Buffy, spoiler alert, what we have when we are faced with these impossible odds is that we spread the power. In Buffy, they took a magic axe after 7 seasons, took a magic axe, did a spell, and all of the potential slayers had the opportunity to be slayers, and they defeated the Hellmouth. Kind of cool. Makes sense to do the same kind of thing in an agile team. We have impossible odds. There is too much to test if you just have 1 or 2 people doing it. And even if we had enough people to do it, it should be spread around. So we need to distribute that weight more evenly, but we are going to have to do some evolution. And sadly, we do not have a magic axe. So let's get to dumb question time. Do we even need testers anymore then? Yes. I have reasons. We literally just established 3 slides ago that testing is all-pervasive. And the first thing that we think of is getting rid of the specialists. No, let's not do that. Testers also have this kind of magic ability to be stakeholder glue, team glue. Maybe it's because we're particularly communicative. Maybe it's because we're magic. Maybe it's because we're thinking of all of the right things. I don't know. It's there. And the role now goes so much more beyond this idea of doing, right? A manual test script that I have to go through and then I say it didn't work and the developer says, I don't really care. That's changed. It's not just doing, we're coaching, we're teaching, we're asking questions. And in my personal experience, so I'm a product owner and a tester, and in the teams where I am a product owner, I have to have the one focus of being a product owner. I'm not testing as a product owner. I'm checking that the customer will get what they need, and I'm checking that it works. I'm looking to validate my trust. If I am a tester and looking only to validate my trust, I'm a bad tester. And I can't be there for the team when they need me now to test this thing, because I might be talking to a customer or talking to someone else. I have done a small amount of Java development. Never let me anywhere near your code. But I've done a small amount of it, and I know that when I'm concentrating on trying to get something to work, I am actively rejecting any thought about how it might not. So I believe that we as people can only have one focus, and it makes sense not to try and make us do too many things. Knowledge work is hard enough as it is. Okay, in the wise words of Bob Dylan, if things are changing, we are going to have to change with them. That means, I think this is the second Pokemon slide. Where's Jeff? We got more Pokemon. So we have changing circumstances. That means we need to adapt. And we know that the only constant is change. In IT specifically, right? It's terrifyingly fast, so we need to be changing with it. And I mean we need to be changing whether you identify as a tester, a developer, a scrum master, a question asker, the person that bakes the cookies, I don't know. Everybody needs to be willing to evolve. Okay, so the first thing that we've been doing, or that we did, was teaching developers to test. Let's go back to dumb question time. But the ISTQB says that separation of test and development is the best thing that we can do, and we should never, ever let developers test code, especially not stuff that's been done in their own team. No. I'm sorry, but that is so last millennium. Seriously. Like, we need to really get over that. We're still not saying that developers should do all of the testing, but developers' perspective and skills are valuable. We need to stop thinking about developers as really stupid people who just happen to be able to write good code. Right? I love developers. So everyone's skills are relevant. And the more we are testing, the more we're spreading this out, this is a good thing to do. There is too much to do anyway. There's too much to do even if everybody is working on it. Okay, so I spend quite a lot of my time teaching developers how to do exploratory testing. And there is fear there. And that's okay, because it's scary to learn new things. But I don't accept excuses that I have an answer to. So I don't know how to test or what to test. I'm not accepting that excuse. Exploratory testing, this does not mean that everybody can do it, but it's a rather natural process. And if we're used to thinking systematically and working through things and being analytical and kind of curious, then it is something that we can often be trained to do, at least to such a degree that we are being helpful to the team. Or you might get that one developer, like I found, who was really good at it, and he's like, please don't make me a tester, but you'd be really good. I made them a cheat sheet because everybody loves cheat sheets, right? It's good to remind yourself what test ideas are, and practice. You didn't become a good developer overnight either, I doubt. So let's keep practicing. Then we get this, testing is not my job, testing is not my role. Sorry, people, it is now. It's part of your role. It's part of what we do. It should have always been part of what we're doing. Testers are obviously going to support with charters, with coaching, with pairing, doing all of these amazing things, which is why we are the specialists. But we need to be doing these with other people. And speaking as the product owner again, I'm not sorry. Implemented doesn't mean I can deliver it to a customer. Done is done, and done is tested. And it's also documented. Wait till you find out that you're going to have to be writing documentation as well. I might miss important things. I mean, this is fear. This is okay. We're talking about psychology, and it's important to be aware of these things. But the thing is, I miss things too. We all have blind spots. I'm a damn good tester, but I miss things. And the funny thing is, the more that we spread this out, the more likely we are to not have too many blind spots. We won't all have the same ones. So developers, you might find something that I wouldn't have even thought of. That's kind of cool. Yes, it's a good idea to avoid testing the thing that you just developed. On the continuum of not testing to testing the world, it's just before not testing. But usually we don't end up having to do that. And we can always discuss risks. So if I've got a developer who's developed something, usually that person knows what they are afraid of. Right? Where do you feel not so good? Where did you spend more time? Where did you have to use a new library that you've not used before? Those are great for charters. Okay. Funnily enough, when we started doing this with our developers, they were like, well, are the testers going to learn to code too? And I love this because on the one hand, we've got that Calvin and Hobbes image saying, don't let them near my shiny code. But then there's the other side saying, well, if they're going to leave their comfort zone, then if I'm going to leave my comfort zone, then they are going to leave their comfort zone too. My promise, everybody is going to be leaving their comfort zone. I haven't been in my comfort zone for about the last 10 years, so I'm taking everybody with me. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about evolving developers. Talking about evolving the team, once we've started getting the whole team involved in doing exploratory testing on a story level before releases, whenever we're doing these kind of things, suddenly all of these people start thinking a little bit more like testers too. Oh wait, how are we going to test this? How will we know if it's done? Do we have more examples for that? And suddenly the questions that if you ask them as a tester in a Three Amigos or a user stories meeting, everyone rolls their eyes and go, oh, not you again, you with your questions. It becomes more relevant to the whole team. So we start thinking about quality at multiple levels and how we can make that available to us, the information that we're getting. So we start to evolve the team. One very concrete thing that I want to give you is something that we introduced as the final question in our stand-up meetings, which was, what can we get done today? So we often have this middle column backlog problem, right? It's done, it's done, it's done. We love starting things and we hate finishing things. As a product owner, I really like it when things are finished. As a tester, I also like to know that things are tested. So to get rid of this middle column being absolutely huge, we say, what can we get done today? And then we go through and we say, okay, well, that one, it needs testing. Who can test it? And asking that question is, well, I could test it, but I'd really need your help, Alex, because the last time I did this, we missed something bad, and I'd like your input. Sure, we can pair on that, that's fine. Or we're blocked on this one. Okay, why are we blocked? What do we need to do? And so that's a way of evolving the team mindset in terms of quality and getting everybody involved as well in testing, exploratory testing, writing even other kinds of tests. I promised that we'd evolve the testers as well. Like I say, nobody gets to stay in their comfort zone. And it was always the case. It was always the case that UI tests, automated UI tests, like I say, we use them at an appropriate place and we do it well, so it works. It's very good. They were very much the domain of the testers. Testers are integrated into the teams, but that was kind of their thing. Now, that needs to change if we're all going to be evolving. And it does make sense to have multiple people working on these things, which meant that we needed to start talking about how we're using this as a communication, a way of communicating between testers, developers, and maybe other stakeholders. And that means that it's incredibly important to have very, very good quality of them. So let's get to the next dumb question. Does this mean that all testers have to code or that only developers should automate? Now, speaking as someone who's had a lot of experience in requirements engineering, I hate anything that says all or only. Those are not good words. They should make us all go, ooh. Actually, I hate the word should as well. But anyway, okay, no. What it means is that everyone on the team needs to work together and that we might all have something to learn. One of the things in our context that it did turn out to be relevant to learn was that our testers did start learning some Java. Now, this was about their faces, because it's scary, right? If you've not done much of this before, you know that there are these really, really cool kids, the developers, I know, it's ironic, that do all of this magic code stuff, and it's all complicated, and we know how much can go wrong with it because we find the bugs, right? It's a little bit scary. However, it turns out, and I really, really liked this in Alexi's talk before, when we're writing Java for writing tests, it might be different than the languages or the ways that we use to write code. It turns out that it is. So if I look at a good structure of a test that's doing something like an acceptance test going through the UI, sure, I've got some kind of tool API. It could be Selenium. Selenium has a really, really small, slim API. It's got like, what, 4 actions? You look at other tools, they might have 300. So there is a level between here and here, which can be intensely technical, which is exactly the point where I want my super cool developers to be like, let's sit together and work on this. I know what I need as a tester, and you know maybe better ways of doing that or quicker ways of doing that than I know right now. That's fine. When we start getting to this level, though, maybe this is a manager, maybe this is a customer, maybe this is a test manager kind of role, maybe this is someone who's just learning some Java, maybe this is someone who's learned a bit more, but it doesn't matter where the things are. Regardless of where I am, I have a way of communicating and a way of knowing what my level is. I have some examples of this because people don't often believe me. So if we look at this, this is kind of a test case level. So if I'm doing a customer creation test, I check that the customer does not exist. It's always important to do the check before as well, for reasons. Then I create the customer, and then I check that the customer does exist. This is entirely readable. It reads pretty much like any kind of DSL that you'll have in any kind of tool. It just happens to be Java. If I go a little bit deeper, and if we're doing, this is very, very similar. There's a few differences, but it's very similar to the kind of page object pattern that we see. Then maybe I have my create customer. This is important. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we use a lot of static methods because what we're doing when we're doing this is not modifying objects. We don't need to be doing that. We're passing data to things. So it's entirely different. And funnily enough, working with static things is a lot easier if you've not done a great deal of programming. Object orientation can come later if you need it. You don't always. Not for tests anyway. So we have maybe something that is a workflow, a service. Then we drill down. We have an internal workflow where we're doing our sets. And we drill even further down to things like our set street. We've got some kind of reused context. That might be our very technical keywords. And depending on that, what that looks like, that could be something like this. Now, this is an easy example. I have an example in other slides, which is, this is the thing that you need to write in Selenium to iterate through a table. It's big. I'm not going to be writing that kind of stuff. But we're all talking the same language. We're all doing the same thing, and what we're finding, I don't want to get too far in advance, but we're finding that people, when they start at the top levels, they kind of naturally end up getting down and down and down, and we get better at communicating with each other. The really funny thing is that this is where this fear comes in. I have, still on my phone, a message from a developer saying, I'm a little bit scared that your testers are learning to program in Java. I think they're going to do scary things with it. I think that it's going to be like, he didn't quite say this, but the image was children running around with knives. He didn't actually say that, but that was the rough thing. In the same week, I had a conversation with one of my testers that was working with him in a project saying, the developers, we're doing all of this in Java, it's really cool, but the developers, they want to help on the tests. They're going to break my lovely structures. They don't know how to test. They're going to ruin it. And this story could have gone in so many ways. But fortunately, those two people are very open and very communicative. And what they did was, the developer, it was funny, they came via me, but it ended up that he asked in a very, very nice way, hey, tester, do you think that I would be able to give you a review of that very technical action? There's a couple of things. Turned out to be things like, else's that were empty or things that were done in a different order, so it wasn't quite as effective as it should be. And the tester was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So we ended up with things like this. Can we talk about this? From the developers, the code that we write for tests is different than the code that we write for development. And I've started being able to see that. From the rest of the test team who heard about it, that developer was really friendly. Will he come and give us a code review? Wow, that's amazing. I'm interested in pairing with testers and not just on UI tests. Let's talk about test data. Let's get someone to look over this unit test I'm doing. Let's talk about all of these other things, because apparently these people that both work on the same team are both intelligent and have ideas and might ask questions. Who would have thunk it? Java for tests is different than for code. And I believe that in about 2 years, I will have the very first example of a tester who came to me, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago. She comes from chemistry. She comes from chemistry, so she's learned all of this by being taught by us and by doing. I think that she will be the first person that says to me, I'm going to go and become a developer, which is exciting. It still doesn't mean that everyone should learn Java. It's just that sometimes it can help, depending on your context, and sometimes that might work for you. Next question. So, now that we're teaching testers to code, should testers write production code? I told you I hate the word should, right? What do you think the answer is? No. No, they shouldn't. Not necessarily. We really, really need to get over the idea that programming is binary. Either you are a cave person that has never seen a computer or a line of code in their life, or you are the super, super duper, full stack, left, right, up, down, I don't even know software developer that does all of the architecture and knows JavaScript frameworks before they even come out. We need to get over that idea. Being technical is a continuum, and it's such a wide continuum. There are so many things that aren't involved with code, and it really isn't just this yes or no switch. We also need to get over the idea that it is the most important factor. I know before we had a picture of a hammer and a nail, right? If you can code, you think everything is a problem that can be solved with code, which is great, because I'm kind of jealous of people that can code. It looks kind of awesome. But it's not the most important thing all of the time. It's one of many, many tools that we have. And I'm going to do something really egotistic, and I'm going to quote myself, because I won't be able to say it in the same way I managed it. So I often get the question, as we just had, should all testers learn to code? And the way that I like to rephrase the question now is, should all developers learn to communicate with people who can't? Because that would be just as good. A lot of my testers are interested in learning to code, not just because it's cool and for the communication, but because they see that they are seen as second-class citizens because of this, right? That shouldn't be the case. As developers, one needs, I can't say we, but I'm going to anyway. As developers, we should be able to talk to customers who might have even less idea about it. So it's about this two-way thing. Code is one thing, it's one toolbox. Okay, so don't we just really need an agile chimera? Don't worry if you don't know what that is, because it's one of them. A chimera is a monster from Greek mythology that has the head of a lion, the head of a goat on its back, and the tail of a snake. I think they're terrifying, so you're welcome for the nightmares. I also think that if I asked that chimera to be a lion, it'd probably do a good job, but if I asked it to be a pigeon, I wouldn't have a great deal of luck. So I think, no, we don't just need something that is an agile chimera. We need to also get away from the idea that we have this Swiss Army knife team member. I know that we talk about not having silos, but I think that we take that in the wrong direction. We're not going to get carbon copies of all of the skills, all of the traits, all of the things that we can do in every single team member. It's not going to happen, and I don't think we'd want it either, because if you've read any studies on diversity in teams, then you'll know that diversity in teams is a good factor for the success. So having people that aren't all the same is good for us. Yes, we shouldn't have a bus factor of one, that one person gets knocked down and then the whole team is in trouble. But we don't need to have everybody being the same. I really, really like the idea of blurring the lines. That's what we're doing, and I really love that. I think Cheesy this morning said exactly that same phrase. Where I differ slightly from that is that I say we still need the focus and we still need the specialization, because there are so many things to do. It's talking about technical debt, it's talking about user experience, it's maybe being a little bit better in the performance than you are in the back-end stuff. it's all of these things coming together. T-shaping is good, and I think sometimes we talk about X-shaping and other alphabet-type shaping. It's a little bit like alphabet soup. And those things are good. Yes, we should be looking over our own areas. But I think that there is a case for saying that focus and specialization are important in certain roles, but that we all work together. I'll get to that a little bit more. And the other thing is, it's about the equality. Sometimes when we get to the idea of everybody being the same, what we really mean is that everybody should be a complete full-stack developer, and yeah, that non-important testing stuff, they can do that too. No. Testers are just as important. We are all working together, and like I say, that's the idea. Okay, the other thing is that evolution, since we're talking about evolution, does not give us chimeras. Evolution gives us chameleons. Evolution gives us things that are able to react to their circumstances. Foxes that have white fur, I forget, so I'm losing my English as my mother language. White fur when it's snowing and brown fur when it's not. And I even read this morning about a caterpillar that can make itself look like a snake if it's threatened. So that's what evolution gives us, things that are able to adapt to their context. Chameleons thinking, what color do I need to be in this context to be the best thing I can and possibly not get eaten? I hope that none of you are being eaten on your teams, but the analogy is there. And so what I like to talk about, I made this term up yesterday, I'm very, very proud of it, is dynamic persona and context-based team composition. Good, right? What do I mean with that? What I mean is that we aren't necessarily just one type of role or one type of skill set or one type of piece in the puzzle in every single team. We might not even be that same puzzle piece in every single sprint. So if I'm talking about testers, I might have a kind of persona that's like an enabler. That person gets the right people together, has conversations, tells stories, says, hey, let's do this together, or I can show you, but I need you to be sitting with me, or I know how this works, can we do this together? I might be a convincer. I might be someone that is literally just capable of convincing a whole team to do something, even though I am standing on the sidelines. It's a valuable skill. I might be the builder. I might be someone that says, I know how to do this, I'm going to do it, here's the prototype, now I'm going to sell you on it. Of course, the selling you on it is very important, because of course, if I just end up with all of the cool things I've done, then I'm a silo and that's not whole team quality. I might be the keeper of knowledge, which means that I've had a lot of experience. I have seen the bad things. I know the questions to ask. So my team always say to me, how did you know that if you did that charter, we were going to find errors? I'm like, because we always do. That's experience, and that's important. So I might be that person in a specific context. In terms of developers on the team, I might be a test-enthused developer, someone that's like, I think testing is cool, and so I'm going to help people on the team to do even better testing. I'm going to set up your script to help you do this. Let's look at why the environment is so slow on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. It's happened. Let's do these things together. I am interested. It's relevant to us. I'm going to help you actively. And what we always, always need, at least at the moment until these things become more natural to us and we've stopped having these still kind of psychological divides sometimes, especially when it comes to first and second class and developers being cool and testers being less cool, is that we need allies. People who will listen to us, people who will talk with us, that if we haven't understood something, people who will not say, you don't need to know that. Seriously, never ever tell that to anyone. It's learn to explain things in a way that people can understand it, because that will pay dividends when that person asks a sensible question that makes you go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. It's worth it. So, does it work? Are we in the same boat or are we up the creek? So my experience says, yes, it does work. I have seen teams go from release phases, I mean, okay, now we're talking over like a 9 years period, but release phases of 3 months to release phases of 0 days. But within a 6-month period, I've seen them go from a release phase of 2 weeks to 0 days. I've also seen what happens when still something that we didn't know about makes it out and we have to go, right, okay, we're going to have to fix this. And how a team pulls together in that kind of situation, because we're practiced in pulling together generally. What you need, though, it's a culture change, right? That's not going to happen overnight. If you don't have it yet, you probably won't be able to go back to work on Wednesday and say, right, Alex had a picture of minions and I have a vision. It might not work. You need to be, that story I told about the tester and the developer, you need to be open to communication and open to learning. Because when you have that, I believe very, very firmly that we as humans are example-driven. The first time we see an example of something, getting to that first example is hard. But once we've seen that, we know that it's possible and we are willing to recreate it and to help others recreate it. So the first step is hard, but then we get the culture change. And what we have to do for that is to be open to these kind of evolution and addressing our fears and speaking with people instead of just saying, I'm not going to do that. The other aspect to it, if you want to look at it, is I don't see that we have any other choice than to make it work. Quality is important, it's everywhere. So even if it looks a little bit less like 3 happy minions in a boat and a little bit more like, okay, somehow we are building this raft, I think that that's what we have to do. We have to make this work for us. We have to take the skills that we have to develop skills that we don't have, get other people into the teams, and we have to be working on this together to have whole team quality. So, wise words, I promised. Here's hoping they're wise. Funnily enough, the talk is called Whole Team Quality. And as I was writing the slides, I realized I don't even want to talk about whole team quality anymore. I want to talk about whole team value. Because whether we are writing code, asking questions, writing a test, doing a test report, writing documentation, being a scrum master, being a product owner, doing any of these things, we're doing it for the customer, right? We're not just doing it to tick off some boxes on some manifesto or some scrum ritual or whatever. We are doing it to deliver value, and if the thing we are doing is not being valuable, then why are we doing it? So let's get away from code quality tests. Let's talk about value, and let's do that as a team and do what we need to do as a team to make that happen. I want you all to be chameleons, not chimeras. Take that with you, be a chameleon. Look at your context. See, what do I need to be? Is it a little bit different than what I needed to be yesterday? Where are these fascinating human-to-human APIs that nobody has ever documented and they're buggy and it's interesting? But how are we going to make those work? Because we can. I think that we need to be humble enough to learn things, even if it's late on in the game and we've all been doing this for a little while, but also confident in our own abilities and what we know. That's kind of specifically addressed to the testers. Like I say, we tend to be the underdogs sometimes. That doesn't have to be the case. Wow, cool. We need to learn, we need to teach, and we need to share with people. We really can't be saying, I'm scared of what's happening now in my project, so I'm going to hoard my knowledge like a squirrel. Don't be squirrels. I do like squirrels, but no, don't be them. We need to share. We need to keep evolving. I think that in 2 years, I'll be saying, okay, that was the talk that I did about whole team quality, and now we're talking about something else entirely. Because hopefully we as an industry will have got further, and we'll have new problems. Because if we don't have new problems, it means everything's stopped, and we don't really want that. And I've said it a few times, and I want to leave you with it, because all of this happens when people talk to each other. There's a nice saying that most of the problems in IT are not technical problems. I believe that 100%. I have seen magic things happen just because people talk to each other. And I think that that is the most important thing that we can do, is to communicate with each other and to be open. Thanks very much.
Don't you afraid that you will end up with the feature implementation only, driven by the customer needs?
Am I afraid that we'll only listen to the customer need and not what they actually want?
Yeah, because customers want new features.
Okay.
Good quality, of course.
Yeah.
But give me more features.
Yeah, yeah.
And we will be having more developers in the idea, right, to do new features. So in the end up, we may end up with developers coding the features.
Okay. I see what you mean. I mean, there's this idea of like, yay, the team is working well, I can get this feature, this feature, this feature, because that's what customers often think about Agile. Funnily enough, I predict, let's go with predictions. I have a crystal ball as well. I predict that if we are all working on this as a team, that the likelihood that we can say to the customer, look, we understand what you need because we've been working with you as a team. And maybe let's do a little spike on this, and then we'll see if you need more. And dear customer, you're so impressed. We have trust because we deliver things to you that you need. So what we need to do now is to get rid of some technical debt. What we need to do now is talk to you about the user experience of this because it's not consistent with the rest of the product. I think that as a cohesive mass, we actually have a bit more power as a development team to work with the customer like that. Some of that is the product owner's job, right? The product owner has to be like, no customer, I love you loads, but that's a stupid idea. I nearly swore. So I see it going the other way. I understand your fear, but my prediction would be if they were all pulling together, then we'll pull together on a lot of topics as well. But I'm an optimist. I think Mark had a question?
Yeah, I can't quite understand why coding in Java is somehow different, or is it coding for testing?
Coding for testing in Java is different than coding for production code in Java. So I really liked Alexi's examples before that when we talk about code patterns that we tend to talk about don't repeat yourself. When we talk about test patterns, we might talk about, you had a different one, but I use write explicit tests. So there might be things that are done differently, and specifically developers look at static calls and go, woo, why are you doing that? But we've had lots of conversations about this, and it seems that that's a good thing to do. It can be context-based, but the idea is that you have one tool, for example, Java, and how you use that tool might be differently dependent on the context you're using it for. So maybe I wasn't quite clear about that.
So it's not specific to Java?
No, God, no. It's just the one that I know the most about, which is not saying much. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have ever any developer noticed, like any developer that actually appreciated that change?
Yes. Yeah, they do. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's scary. And I understand people. People are scared of change. But I think on the one hand, if you see that other people are learning as well, that's why I said it in a funny way, but everybody is leaving their comfort zone, right? And I've seen it happen, so I believe it. That's what I mean with example driven. I've seen teams go to customers and say, look, we can't do it like this. We really do need to get a tester on the team. Or I know that you think about it like this, but I've seen this. I've seen examples of it. And the more people we have like that, the snowball effect. I'm not going to say that there aren't people who will just be like, nope. But then we have that with Agile. And then we get into the difficult situation of if somebody doesn't want to be taught and isn't willing to learn, those are difficult things. But I think as a general rule, developers that I've seen so far have been happy with it. And like I say, I honestly don't see that we have any other choice. So it's like it or lump it, I think. But we try and do that in a nice way. Yeah.
What do you do with the either developers and testers who are still not willing to change and who doesn't want to get out of the context?
Me personally, I have a... Whoa. So my first strategy, I was talking about this on Friday, my first strategy is biscuits. It's coercing, it's convincing, it's pleading for them to try and experiment, right? If we're in an Agile team, then we should be allowed to experiment and it should be safe to fail. So a lot of the time people are afraid of failing, and we need to create the culture where they're allowed to do that, and that's difficult. The hard answer, I don't know about firing, but the hard answer is if somebody isn't working in a team well for whatever reason, either because they're hoarding their information so that they're like the rock star, or because they're not playing well with the others, or because they refuse to learn something, then moving them out of the team might be a good idea. It's not a nice thing to do, but I've learned to look at it that way as well now. It's hard because I like people. I've never fired anyone. I just want to make that very, very clear.
Biscuit-driven development.
Biscuit-driven development is the way that I go. It's, yeah. Okay. Was there another question? Or?
Any more questions?
I'm around tomorrow as well, so come and find me. I'm the girl with the pink earrings, and if you're like, oh, that sounds really awesome, I should totally work there, come and talk to me too. Okay, thank you.